All right, welcome here into the live coverage. Right now, we're paying attention to Tropical Storm Debby right now here in the Gulf of Mexico. So, something to be paying attention to. Definitely as we, starting to approach Florida. So, we're going to take a look at that here in a short second here. A lot to be paying attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of hours. So we're going to take a look at some of the models as well. We're going to go really through everything as we possibly can here. I got everything all set up, so we're going to be here maybe for the next 2 hours tracking these storms right now and talking about this and as well as waiting for the 8 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center. So make sure if you do have any questions, though, leave it down below in the chat. I will try to answer them as much as I possibly can. So let's head on over here into the tropics. So right now, I do have a little bit of a setup here on the right side of the screen, right over here, or right down actually here. But tropical update, you can see the tropical storm with the advisory is and all that. There's a satellite under that, and then a little bit of a slideshow kind of on what the National Hurricane Center is keeping an eye out on. So a little bit to be paying attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of hours. Let's take a look here at what we're already dealing with. If we take a look here at what we're already dealing with here. Oh. Whoopsies. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Here is the tropics. Obviously, this is the radar for southern Florida. We can clearly see some storms still off the coast, really. Some pretty strong storms. A little bit of a band coming now into central Florida here. We'll talk about that. We'll go kind of city by city here. And then we have a little bit of these outer bands also pushing in to southern Florida. So something to be paying attention to. I've been really paying attention to the central Florida one. Let's go back down to South Florida here. We've already seen a couple severe thunderstorm warnings over here. We've seen a couple of that over here in the past couple of hours. We've seen thunderstorms mostly from this band right here, but we're going to keep an eye out on this very closely here. But majority of that heavier rain and stronger storms is staying off to the west here of about Naples. So we're going to kind of just keep an eye out on this. Let's zoom in a little bit to Miami. Miami, you're dealing with some pretty big storms that's already kind of approaching right over here into your area. If we head into the velocity signature, more of the brighter color, that shows that we have a little bit more of some stronger gusts reaching up in there. So something to be keeping an eye out on. We're definitely going to be keeping a track on this as we go on right now. If we head up here into near where Tampa is right here, we can clearly see there's a pretty big band actually coming through. This was a little bit more stronger earlier, has weakened, and that's why I was paying attention to it. It really has started to weaken a pretty good amount here. A little bit of strong storms over here on the east coast of Florida, but something to be paying attention to. So if you live in Tampa, please be getting prepared now, because this could bring some possible 30, 35 mile an hour tropical storm, possible wind gust with it as well. Even though it might just look like rain, we could be seeing some pretty gusty winds here in the next couple of minutes. So want to keep an eye out on that. But as we are waiting for the 8 p.m. advisory here, just in about under the hour here, 40 miles an hour is what that tropical storm Debby is at right now, according to the National Hurricane Center at the 5 p.m. advisory. 1,007 millibars. We're expecting that to obviously drop as it is heading into the Gulf of Mexico here, where really it's in favorable environment here. But now we are anticipating a Category 1 at landfall of a 75 mile an hour Category 1. So that's something to be paying attention to over here. That is expected August 5th here, so that's about Sunday, I believe. Yeah, that's Sunday around 2 p.m. We could be seeing a possible landfall Sunday night or Sunday morning, whenever it really feels like it. If it speeds up, slows down, anything like that, we could be seeing something like that. So definitely something to be paying attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of hours. What are we expecting here from some of these, from the rainfall? Really, that's our biggest threat right now, is the rainfall. So going to keep an eye out on some of these storms, obviously, because we could see some severe thunderstorm warnings as well. We're already starting to see some over here in Louisiana. We'll get to those ones maybe in a little bit here. Maybe track a little bit of the severe weather. Kind of just paying attention to the storms right now in southern Florida here. want to take a look here actually at... Let's take a look here if we turn off this really quickly. I think actually the hurricane hunters are now in Debby. They're in Tropical Storm Debby, and we can kind of see it right here. So if we take a look here, turn off the radar here. Which radar? There we go. We're on this one. Oopsies. So with the... Everything's freezing up. Hold on. There we go. So with this storm right now, it does seem like we have that plane. The plane is going in right now into Tropical Storm Debby here. We can clearly see we are starting to lose a little bit of visibility as it is now kind of the sun's starting to set pretty soon here, but right now it's heading into Debby. The question is do we see some stronger winds once it gets out of, you know, kind of the state here? It left from Lakeland, Florida, it seems, and it did once it left from Lakeland, Florida, is pushing over here down to the southwest into the storm. So it's going to fly around that one a little bit, and I think there is another plane in there, I believe, here. We're getting a little bit of, yeah, so this one took off from Louisiana. So this one will be a little bit later where we find some more information from, you know, these planes. So this one will take a little bit longer than the other one that took off from Florida. So something to be paying attention to. But if we kind of look here at the satellite, we're seeing a lot of deep convection starting to blow up over here. I do not know why my pen keeps getting bigger, but there we go. Definitely some deep convection starting to blow up over here, kind of just right off the coast of Naples and Cape Coral area, and then possibly some big convection blowing up over here west of Bradenton and Sarasota as well. So something to be paying attention to. We are going to lose that satellite feature here in probably the next couple of hours due to, you know, just it's kind of really just due to the sun's obviously going down at this time. But taking a look here at the of the, you know, kind of what we're expecting here. Not a lot of dry air is in front of it, so that's obviously going to help it a lot. So as long as the storm stays in some complete moist air, it's going to keep it up, and it's going to get stronger here. But as I was talking about in the recent videos here, the more it hugs the west coast here, the more likely it's not going to develop into anything big. So definitely something to be paying attention to. So if you do live in Florida and you are watching, please make sure if you have any questions, I will try to answer them to the best I possibly can down in the chat. Take a look at these models really quickly here. What was I going to turn off? There we go. I was going to turn off the hurricane hunters for right now. We'll get back to them in a little bit here. All right. So taking a look here, let's go into the second hour. So at 8 p.m., this is kind of what the future radar is anticipating. Obviously, that band's going through Tampa. Another possible band going in through Naples here. But once again, we're always going to be seeing these outer bands start to head into Florida here. Something to be paying attention to. And then we go over here into the next couple of hours, 10 p.m. tonight, 12 a.m. That's when we really could start to see some pretty big storms over here in west central Florida here. We could definitely see some rainfall, but these outer bands could possibly bring some tornadoes. So please make sure if you are under a tornado warning, you are getting into your safe space. Then we keep an eye out on these storms right now going into early tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. We can see that eye is, you know, the eye trying to form an eye, not very, very, you know, good looking here on the radar, but according to this radar, clears out a little bit of Florida here, but we're still going to have a little bit of that storm surge continue on over here. Obviously not as strong as it will possibly be up here, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. Then we go on, as you can clearly see, around 11 a.m. tomorrow. This model is saying we have some outer bands going in through kind of west central Florida once again, Bradenton, Cape Coral area, and then possibly the Tampa Bay could be getting some pretty big storms as well as the East Coast. So want to keep an eye out on that as well. That's heading 18 hours in. The question is how close does the storm get to making that landfall? Because where will this go? That could go in there. It could, you know, kind of just push up in different little areas here. So something to be paying attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of hours, really. We could be seeing some pretty intense storms. So a little bit to be paying attention to here. If we go, let's go zoom into Tampa really quickly here, because it does seem like we have an outer band coming into Tampa. So Tampa having a big outer band coming in right now just south of Interstate 4. We are seeing some pretty strong winds most likely. in this region. Take a look at the velocity. Possibly reaching up to around 30-40 miles an hour wind gust here. The worst of it, I would say, for Tampa will be most likely tomorrow. Most likely will be tomorrow here. But actually, let's take a look here at the models for the... really kind of for the rainfall, because I think that's our biggest thing that we want to pay attention to really closely here. So taking a look here at the rainfall threat for Debby and Florida here. So Debby here, we can clearly see, obviously still down here, so not putting too much rain on Florida right now. Definitely over here, and then the Carolinas will be something to be paying attention to as well. So we're definitely going to have probably a lot of live streams going on here. But if we take a look, there it is. This is according to the GFS model, the 18Z, bringing it very, very big and intense. Whoa, look at this. Lots of rainfall could be expected. Really, lots of rainfall could be expected in this main region right here. And I just want to say a little bit more, if it goes off to the west a little bit more, that could change up this whole thing. Same with going east here. So especially if it does go east, the more of the heavier rain, according to the GFS, will be most likely here on the west coast of Florida. But I mean, over here in northern Florida, around Perry, Florida here, reaching up to over a foot of rain, according to the GFS model. And then over here in Savannah, Georgia, reaching over a foot of rain as well, possibly 14 inches of rain here in Savannah, Georgia. So something to be paying attention to, definitely. And then it starts to build up in the Carolinas as that storm does stall out. Something to watch right now. It does seem like the 18Z is coming out right now, so something to pay attention to. We head into the European model here for the total precipitation. A little bit more of a different type of scenario here. Get this off my screen really quickly. There we go. So a little bit more of a different scenario, I would say, because now the European model on the 12Z is holding it more on the coast here. Holding it a little bit more on the coast here, and we can clearly kind of see that... we kind of can clearly see that it's hugging more on the west coast. So that would include more of Spring Hill, Tampa, Cape Coral. That is the areas we want to keep an eye out on definitely very, very closely here, because, I mean, that's pushing up to pretty heavy amounts of rain here, reaching up to possible 10 to 11 inches in rain. And then more rain will definitely be an impact over here for for the eastern part of Georgia and South Carolina. So something to be paying attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of hours as well with the rainfall. How much rainfall will everyone be getting? Still going to be waiting for that National Hurricane Center to come out right now here. But here's the look at the radar. If you're just joining in, please make sure if you have any questions, leave it down below as well. But still some storms still kind of approaching into the Florida area. We can clearly see that. Still that band coming into the Tampa Bay region right now. We'll kind of just go into several areas. So let's take a look here at the Keys right now. Take a look here at the Keys. The Keys we can clearly see not getting impacted too much. I know there is definitely probably some gusty winds sitting in the Keys though. Definitely will say that there is some pretty gusty winds in the Keys. And as long as we're paying attention to the severe weather that does come into southern Florida and west central Florida today, you know, we got to keep an eye out on that, because we could see a little bit of spin ups. And right now, if we head actually into the velocity signature of this radar, we could possibly be seeing a little bit of spin ups here. Let me head on to the Miami radar. So as you can clearly see, according to the Miami radar right here, very, very strong winds are right now off of the southeastern coast here of Florida. Very, very high winds are up there right now. Could be seeing a little bit of spinatures over here with this rain band. So something to be paying attention to. Definitely. So Miami, you're not really getting too much at this time. Naples, you guys have more. Majority of that rain is off to your west. Kind of can clearly see it. So like if you're at that beach right there, you definitely will see a lot more of that rain off to the west here. Then we keep more of an eye out on this storm very closely, because this storm could push up into the Naples area, which could bring some definite gusty winds over here. And then we head on over here to around central Florida. Let's head into around Sarasota, Bradenton area. Keeping an eye out on the Sarasota, Bradenton area, we can clearly see that band did go through earlier and probably brought some pretty gusty winds with it. And then we're going to continue to see that push up to the north here. And if we take a look here at Tampa, we can clearly see those big winds are going to probably push up here. Most likely it's just going to be rain, not too big of storms right now. Tomorrow will most likely be the big storms that possibly could head into western Florida here, but definitely a big rain band will be coming in right now here with probably some gusty winds right now heading into Florida. So definitely something to be paying attention to as we see these strong storms start to pop up here. So let's take a look here actually at the models. I want to take a look at the models really quickly here and see what we're dealing with and what we could be anticipating down the road. I'm trying to get this pulled up here. I think it's having a little bit of issues. Oopsies. Okay. Let's get this tropical tidbits up on here. It did work. It just didn't open it up for some reason. Okay. So taking a look here at tropical tidbits, taking a look here at the 18Z models. Obviously, over the past couple days, I've been posting it on my X page. We've seen completely different scenarios. I mean, obviously, you know, before the storm really even started forming as much, we saw a little bit more of the East Coast that could have been in play here. Then brought it over to the West Coast, and GFS did win that, you know, kind of saying it was going to go on the West Coast of Florida. And then really keeping an eye out on some of these storms right now. But the National Hurricane Center has been keeping their forecast kind of in line of what they've been keeping it, but majority of it really has been pushing off to the west a little bit. So something to be paying attention to with that. If we head into the intensity models, possibly up there for Category 1. So possible Category 1 could be expected here. Definitely could be expected over here for Debby, even though, you know, some of the models not saying a Category 1, but the National Hurricane Center is agreeing with a Category 1. It all depends. So let's actually go into some of these model runs here to take a look here. The GFS brand new model run has now come out here. Let's take a look at that. As we can clearly see, brings it into more of the Florida panhandle, going into more of the Florida bend here. We can clearly see that. And then definitely dumps a lot of rain over the Carolinas and northern Florida here. Right here, we could definitely be seeing something as it comes into around South Carolina and Georgia border here, dumping heavy amounts of rain. But for Florida, that's our main focus right now. Obviously, I would say GFS has really been taking it, maybe a push a little bit more off to the west for the GFS model. So that could be something. And then the Icon model, I feel like, has been pretty consistent on this one area right here on where it wants to go. Makes a little stall over here and then goes up into North Carolina. So this could be a very, very dangerous system for rainfall, I would say. I would definitely say, yes, it's going to be very big of an issue when it comes to Florida, but maybe even a bigger issue for this area once it gets out here in the Atlantic Ocean. Could be definitely seeing something interesting. But if we take a look at the total accumulation by the Icon, keeps really that rain really off the coast here of the Carolinas, but then also the west coast of Florida, according to the Icon model, could reach up to maybe a foot of rain. So something to be paying attention to, that is for sure. That is definitely for sure here. So we're going to keep obviously an eye out on that. Still tracking the severe weather that will most likely be continuing on over here for the next couple of hours. Going to keep an eye out on that. Still that band coming in through western Florida here going into Tampa, but I want to keep an eye out on this down here most likely because this is where we could see a little bit of spin-ups. So definitely some water spouts will definitely most likely happen when the storm, especially when it comes over here. We could be seeing something with that. The question is when does when the National Hurricane Center updates it, do we still see that turn moving off to the northwest happen? When will that turn exactly happen? Because I would say the forecast cone is still a little bit a little bit more on that, bigger side here, not very, very slim on where we know exactly where it's going. Right now, the National Hurricane Center kind of has it more likely going to be making landfall here, just about really just southwest of Perry here. So near Perry area, this area right here, but still, once again, the cone, it can make landfall anywhere over here. So even from Apalachicola all the way to Cedar Key, we could be still seeing a possible something to be paying attention to. So something to be paying attention to, obviously. And if we head over here into the models once again, I want to take a look at that future radar here because I think that's our biggest thing that we want to keep an eye out on very closely here is that future radar, especially because we're almost finished with the 22Z coming out here. So as we can clearly see going into 1 a.m. tonight, we can see some of these more of the storms stay off of the east coast here of the United States. A little bit still head into Tampa Bay area, the western part of Florida here at 1 a.m. Then we kind of can see a little bit more storms start to blow up around the system here. And then we can clearly see some of these storms will start to push up into the western parts of Florida here, and then we keep an eye out on that very closely. Let's take a look here actually at the tropical models for the H-Wharf model. I have not taken a look at the H-Wharf model in a little bit here, so let's take a look at the H-Wharf model to see what we're dealing with. So let's see here exactly what are we anticipating with the H-Wharf model. Whoopsies, let's go back maybe a little bit here to talk about it. So the H-Wharf here, as we can clearly see, 11 p.m. tonight, this is the H-Wharf. What are we expecting with the H-Wharf? Strong storms obviously staying off to the west coast of Cape Coral area. Some of these bands could possibly push up into western Florida here as we go on throughout the next couple of hours. According to the H-Wharf, then we go into 2 a.m., 5 a.m. Really, tomorrow will be the worst day for it. But this area right here, where will that exactly go? These bands will most likely just keep hugging the west coast of Florida here. And then we continue to pay attention to that. And once again, tomorrow early morning, Tampa Bay, you guys are getting hammered with some pretty big storms here. And then this question with the H-Wharf, does this get pushed inland here on where we could be possibly seeing some very, very heavy rain and some very strong winds with this storm? But so far with the H-Wharf, not exactly saying it, definitely says it hugs the coast, maybe just a little bit here, does hug the coast. The big storms does hug the coast here, but Tampa Bay could still be getting some pretty strong storms. Same with Spring Hill, actually. And then brings it more inland here at around 11 p.m. So the H-Wharf is saying it a little bit more of a slower system, I would say, but brings it more inland here, but still these storms still continuing on with the west coast of Florida, brings it in to around St. Mark's area here for the H-Wharf. So something to be paying attention to, and then we're waiting for that. And this is actually a brand new run. So let's take a look here at the H-Mon though, because I want to take a look at the H-Mon because I feel like the H-Mon is something to be paying attention to as well, because that's the other hurricane model that we want to keep an eye out on very closely. Here is the H-Mon, not too big of a zoom out on this storm. Clearly kind of can see though, not as organized as the H-Wharf, but still dumping heavy amounts of rain still on the west coast of Florida here. Then we keep an eye out on the H-Mon right now as it continues to push up and definitely will pose a lot of flooding threat. Same thing with the northern Florida area, but this does follow the National Hurricane Center cone. So the H-Wharf's a little bit more off to the west here, but I mean, it's kind of all just a waiting game at this point to see where we exactly headed with this storm. So a little bit to be paying attention to, obviously, as we're going on. Let's take a look here. If we go back to the warnings, let's take a look here at the warnings right now, because I think that's something we want to really pay attention to. So taking a look here at the all tropical weather warnings here. We have a bunch of alerts here, really, for the tropical weather alerts. So, earlier at around, I think it was the 2 p.m. advisory, tropical storm warning started getting issued over here for the Keys. Tropical storm warnings in this big yellow area here, stretching all the way from southern Florida, about where the Everglades National Park is, going all the way up the west coast here of Florida. Then we have storm surge watches as well for the west coast of Florida here. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting here, because this is obviously where we're expecting the worst part of the storm. We have tropical storm watches over here issued for parts of these areas right here in the Florida Panhandle and parts of southern Georgia as well. And then we clearly see that we have hurricane warnings right now out for Perry area. If we take a look here, Perry, you are in that. Cross City, Greenville, you guys are in these hurricane warnings. We want to keep an eye out, obviously, on that very, very closely here. And then for tropical storm watches or tropical storm warnings for Tallahassee and Apalachicola area, and then storm surge warnings are definitely holding over here. Cedar Key, Homasa Springs, parts of Spring Hill, we could clearly see their storm surge warnings, and then Apalachicola area for storm surge warnings as well. So something to be paying attention to right now here. We have a lot to be paying attention to. Obviously, tropical storm wind speed probabilities here. If we take a look at that, let's turn off all these really quickly here. Taking a look here at the tropical wind speed probabilities, we could clearly see the darker the colors, the more likely it is. Pretty good odds here in this region right here with the orange area. We can clearly see, and then the red will start to approach inland, and that is going to be some pretty good odds for some tropical storm forced winds. So a little bit to be paying attention to as we go on. Obviously, we're going to keep an eye out on this storm right now. So lots to be paying attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of hours, really, to see if we have any storms. So a little bit to be paying attention to. Just watching it closely. Try to see here if we can. There we go. If you do have any questions, make sure to leave it down in the chat. I will try to answer them as much as I possibly can here. Keeping an eye out, obviously, on this storm here. If you live in western Florida specifically here, something to be paying attention to. So, something to be paying attention to, that's for sure. So, keeping an eye out, obviously, on this. Let's head back over here to the radar. I think that's our biggest thing we want to pay attention to right now. For southern Florida here, we can clearly see some of these storms already have some pretty actual possible water spouts. Possible water spouts are in this area as well. Same thing with over here in central Florida. We could be seeing, or west central Florida, we could be seeing some water spouts possibly off the coast here of Naples. And let's take a look at that actually to see if we see any possible spinnatures over here off the coast. Not super easy to look at the velocity signature, I would say. Not very easy to look at the velocity signature right now, but very strong winds are most likely. Pretty gusty winds could be off the coast right now of Florida here. So we have around 30 minutes left here until the National Hurricane Center does bring in their new advisory here to see how fast is it moving and all of that. What's the wind speeds? Has it gotten a little bit stronger? Possibly could have. Let me see if I can get, what's it called? See if I can get another website kind of pulled up here. See if we can get this pulled up. Okay. So let's take a look here at windy. So this is kind of the current, this is the current area right here. These are the current winds that we're looking at right now. Currently, these are the winds. 7-mile-an-hour winds here for Tampa, 22 for Marco Island, 31-mile-an-hour winds right now for the Keys. So let's start off with South Florida here, and then we'll go into Central Florida. Heading into winds here, we can clearly see in these areas we have Sarasota, 14 miles an hour, Palm Beach, 15 miles an hour, Cape Coral, Naples, reaching almost up into the 20s here, so something to be paying attention to. If we head into the waves, take a look at the waves here, we can clearly see 8 feet 8 feet of waves here just off the coast of the Keys. 8 feet of waves, man. That's a lot. A lot of waves are pushing up right now. 32 miles an hour. We can clearly see 31 miles an hour with the winds. Definitely something to be paying attention to. What are we anticipating? Obviously, over the next couple of hours, obviously the winds will intensify a little bit more. So, we're reaching up to 36 possible, almost 40 mile an hour winds possibly with this. This is the European model as well. So this could intensify a little bit more if we zoom in a little bit more off to the west coast here. I think so sensitive here. So if we zoom in right now, we can see obviously those winds reaching up to maybe almost 40 miles an hour here off of Venice, Sarasota, Bradenton. Tomorrow morning here, going into 12 p.m., we can clearly see some possible winds reaching up to possible 30 miles an hour over here in the Tampa Bay area, and that would definitely be something to also pay attention to if we take a look at the Tampa Bay area. So going into tomorrow at this time, if we go into tomorrow around this time right here, we're going to see that storm surge kind of push through the bay, and we'll kind of go into this area right here because of the storms. I mean, or the where the storm is located exactly. Then later on throughout the day, kind of will change its track, and that is when we could see possibly Clearwater Beach, really, and Indian Rocks Beach over here get really impacted by the storm surge. This will be your best opportunity right here for possible storm surge into the Tampa Bay area. So something to be paying attention to right there. The HRR here, bringing it a little bit of a different type of wind situation here, a little bit stronger with winds here, but very, very more spread out, I would say. Going into the GFS here, we can clearly see 50 mile an hour right now for tropical storm force wind gust or wind out here. Then we see it go over here into Florida here. So the question is when does that turn exactly happen here? That's the question. The icon model keeping majority of the winds obviously off to the east side here for the storm. So a little bit to pay attention to. 41, 42, possibly almost up to maybe 50 somewhere. I guess not. So a little bit to be paying attention to, obviously, with these models. Obviously, when the icon, look at this, 56, we could be seeing some pretty strong winds once it's off the coast of the Carolinas as well. So something to be paying attention to. Very, very closely here to be paying attention to that. So take a look here at the wind gust, though. I want to take a look here at the wind gust. What is the wind gust kind of looking like right now with the European model? Heading to around this time here. So the winds here probably in the next, or let's take a look at this time actually, 26 mile an hour here in Tampa. We can clearly see that's one of the biggest ones. Naples, the Keys reaching up to tropical storm force wind gusts. So something to be paying attention to definitely in this area. And that's bringing maybe a little bit of surge into there. Definitely because the waves are already up to about 8 feet here. Could be seeing a little bit of surge. Not too much surge, but something to be paying attention to definitely. Something to be paying attention to definitely. So wanting to keep an eye out on that as well. And most likely we'll be live tomorrow as well, as this storm will be approaching the Florida Bend here, or the Panhandle. We'll have to keep an eye out on that as well very closely here. So something to be paying attention to. So let's head back over here to the radar right now. Not too much exactly happening. Still waiting for the National Hurricane Center to do their 8 p.m. advisory, but let's take a look at the Tampa Bay area. The band's still kind of pushing through here, not moving. These storms are not moving too quickly here. We can clearly see these storms not moving very quickly as well. Same with these storms as well, pushing over here into the north, not pushing inland quick enough here. So that's why the heavy rain will start to fall, because it ain't moving much. So something to be paying attention to with some gusty winds. Definitely over here in this storm as well, we could be seeing some gusty winds, but possible some spin ups as well with some water spouts here. So kind of just waiting here from the National Hurricane Center to kind of just update us here on Tropical Storm Debby here. So I want to keep an eye out on this very, very closely here. Tropical Storm Debby Taking a look here, yeah, so we still don't have any update here. Taking a look at this, we still don't have any update from the National Hurricane Center at this time. We can clearly see that those hurricane warnings are still out here for parts of northern Florida. So something to be paying attention to very, very closely here. What could we anticipate here with several areas, you know, with the windfall, with the rainfall and the winds? Could be definitely seeing possible tropical storm force stretching really out in this area right here. So the Keys are already dealing with that, but if this holds its way here as it turns, it could, you know, any more eastern on the cone here, we could really see some bigger impacts here for the western part of Florida. So something to be paying attention to. And then once again, National Hurricane Center here, right here in this region, is the biggest part of storm surge right now. And we can already see we're most likely tonight we're going to start to see some of that storm surge already happen over here by Bonita Beach. Going into around tomorrow, the storm surge will happen more into the Tampa Bay region, and then heading into as well tomorrow night, we could be seeing it in Yankeetown, Indian Pass, Alquila River. We could be seeing up to 4 to 7 feet of storm surge in this region right here. So really is something to pay attention to as we go on. Obviously, the rainfall threat is one of our biggest threats as well. Most likely the rainfall threat will be more of an issue here for parts of South Carolina and Georgia after the storm kind of heads off into the Atlantic. The question is how close does it stay to the coast? Because if the more close it stays to the coast, then it's not going to strengthen too much, but it's going to stall out and dump heavy amounts of rain in this area. So definitely if you live in the Carolinas, you need to be keeping an eye out on this storm very, very closely here. And, you know, here we've had a little bit of an update here on the flash flooding threat here. Right in this region right here is where we're seeing the best possibilities for the moderate here for rainfall. So Tallahassee, Jacksonville, Savannah, and Charleston, you guys are in that red. For the yellow, we're seeing Charlotte, Raleigh, Augusta, Tampa Bay, Orlando right on the border of it. And then Miami and the Keys are seeing it in the green for the marginals. So something to be definitely paying attention to here as we go on. The arrival time winds here, definitely maybe a little bit of a change, I would say a little bit more of a change here. For the West Coast, or, you know, really it doesn't have the best opportunities here for the West Coast, but something to be paying attention to definitely. But Saturday night, obviously, we're going to be seeing these storms already approaching the Keys. Sunday morning, that's when we're starting to see a little bit more going on. And then Sunday early morning, we could be seeing it into the western or central Florida here. Sunday afternoon, could be seeing a landfall here in Florida around maybe tomorrow at 5, 8. All depends on how fast this storm is moving at that time as well. So something to be paying attention to very, very closely here. So still waiting for the National Hurricane Center here to update the storm. Keeping an eye out, obviously, on the storm very closely here. No severe thunderstorm warnings are active right now here in Florida. Right now, we're not seeing any. We did earlier. We definitely did see some severe thunderstorm warnings earlier here with the winds picking up a little bit in several areas here. So something to be paying attention to. Tomorrow, the West Coast will most likely be more in play here. The west coast of Florida will be more in play tomorrow, as these bigger storms will start to come in tomorrow afternoon, early morning. So rainfall could still be very, very big. Obviously, we could be still reaching up to possible maybe almost a foot of rain in certain areas, especially over here. Possible 8 inches of rain over here on the west coast of Florida. Something to be paying attention to. All depends right now on the tropics, and you know, how the tropics want to, how the Gulf of Mexico wants to help out Debby. But obviously we're not going to help that it drops a bunch of rain. I mean, the Carolinas definitely need to be paying attention to it, as we could be seeing almost 2 feet of rain in the Carolinas. So that is definitely something to be paying attention to. So taking a look here, National Hurricane Center keeping it the same so far. Still waiting, I would say. We're still waiting here. Let's head into the satellite picture really quick to see if we see any change. Hey, there's a little bit of a center, I guess, but taking a look here, I don't think that's a center. I think it's just the models. Take a look here at the satellite picture, though. Taking a look at where the low pressure system exactly is here. So saying it's a little bit more in there. Could we say it's pushing more off to the northwest? We possibly could. I think it's pushing more northwest as well. So the question obviously is when does that turn happen? Because it could hold the east coast of the cone or the western part of the cone. It could hold it. That would change big impacts for a lot of people here. It would change a lot of impacts for people all around, really. So something to be paying attention to. Something to be paying attention to, definitely. So if you haven't seen the forecast cone, this is the forecast cone. There's the location of the storm, expected a Category 1 landfall here in more of the Florida Panhandle, Florida Bend area, and then we can clearly see a big turn up to the north here, not moving quick once it gets off of the coast of Florida here, and then could make its landfall here as a 60-mile-an-hour tropical storm as of right now in South Carolina. So something to be paying attention to definitely as we go on throughout the next couple of hours, waiting for these updates here from the National Hurricane Center. Still, has it picked up speed or anything like that? Let me take a look. So taking a look here, obviously at this, we're paying attention to the wind speeds right now. Could we see a little bit more of a, difference in wind speeds at this time? 1,007 in the minimum pressure, moving northwest at 15. So instead of moving west-northwest, it is moving northwest here at the 15 miles an hour. Could be seeing something to be paying attention to with that here. And we obviously have Tropical Storm Daniel that actually just formed out here. Didn't realize that. Did not realize that until today. Or just now, at least. But something to be paying attention to, that's for sure. So, still waiting from the National Hurricane Center to kind of pull up that here. But taking a look here at the severe weather, not too much going on as of right now. Still one of the bands starting to go into the Tampa Bay area. A little bit more strong storms over here in the western. I would kind of say, though, for this area right here, even though it's kind of looking a little bit more quiet right now, it's not as strong, we could be seeing a pretty big system actually head in tomorrow here. We could be seeing a lot more bigger storms later on tomorrow morning. It's here, so something to be paying attention to, that is for sure. Could be watching this very closely. So. Try to avoid traveling as much as you possibly can if you live in Florida. I would definitely pay attention to that just in case here. Rainfall is going to be our biggest threat, so flash flooding will definitely be something to be paying attention to for sure. That will be something to be paying attention to for sure. Let me pull up this really quickly because I think we actually have something that I could show. A little graphic here that we could show. There we go. Okay, so let me pull this up right here. So this is National Weather Service here, Tampa Bay. So this is the National Weather Service Tampa Bay here. We can clearly see they did post something earlier. So here it is right here. So this is for more of western Florida, what we could be expecting here. Taking a look here, this is from National Weather Service Tampa Bay. Potential peak winds here could be 39 to 57 miles an hour in this yellow zone right here. So if you live in the yellow zone right here, we could clearly see potential peak 39 to 57 miles an hour for the western Florida. Obviously, it'd be very higher up here. I'll try to find the graphic for that. It'll be higher up over here. And then for flooding rain, though, we could be seeing in the orange area, rivers become swollen, some streets and parking lots flooded, and flooding at underpasses here. And then the red, really widespread flooding, and rescuers may be necessary. So something to pay attention to. And then the storm surge, obviously when the storm passes, could be something to be paying attention to. So Something to pay attention to definitely here. I don't know if they posted if this is the same one. Yeah, just in Spanish there. But so definitely something to be paying attention to there, because that can show you that a lot could definitely change with that. So we're going to keep an eye out, obviously, on that very closely. So a little bit of something to be paying attention to. Bum, bum, bum. So still waiting for the National Hurricane Center here. Still waiting for the National Hurricane Center as these storms are obviously still coming in here. But still waiting for the National Hurricane Center to bring us that 8 p.m. advisory right now. So really tomorrow will be the big day for the live coverage, I would definitely say, because of how much, you know, weather we're going to be having coming in. You know, how many storms will be in this area right here especially, but really over here on the west coast of Florida as well. We could be seeing something pretty interesting to be paying attention to as we continue to watch these storms very closely. So something to be paying attention to here. Just waiting for the National Hurricane Center to kind of give us a little update here if the storm direction is still going the same and if the wind speeds have definitely picked up, which I would probably say definitely has picked up maybe a little bit. Might be seeing something a little bit stronger here. Velocity signatures not being too much of help right now. But yeah, the Keys are getting up to 8 feet here of up to 8 feet in this region right here of waves. So that is a lot of waves that are pushing up over here due to high tide as well, due to a new moon tonight. So definitely paying attention to the Keys getting a little bit of that storm surge going into tomorrow. We'll see a little bit more of that storm surge go in over here to the Naples. And then same thing with, or that could actually start probably happening tonight. And then going into tomorrow morning, we could be starting to see it maybe in the Tampa Bay area, just north of Tampa. And then really up to maybe 4 to 7 feet over here where the storm is expected to make landfall. But once again, all it depends is when does that turn happen exactly, and when could we expect a little bit of a turn, because if it goes more on the eastern side of the cone, that could show a little bit more impacts over here for the western part of Florida. If it goes more on the western part of the cone, that will be less impacts here for Florida here, but more impacts maybe over here in this region. But no matter what, most likely landfall will be in this region right here. So I want to keep an eye out, obviously, on where the track could possibly go. That is the big question here, is where does the track at least go? So I want to keep an eye out, obviously, on that very, very closely here. And it does seem like we do have from about 5 hours to go here. Citrus County has now ordered a mandatory evacuation for Zone A for all low-lying areas west of US 19. So US 19 is right here. So US 19 is right over here. Citrus County, pay attention to that right now. See where Citrus County exactly is. So it seems like Citrus County is right over here. It is... Okay, so Citrus County is over here where Homasa Springs is right now. Taking a look at your guys' area, not seeing a lot of rainfall, obviously, but mandatory evacuations, and it did say it was for low-lying areas west of US 19. So it would be this region right over here, this area right here. So mandatory evacuations have been put out for Citrus County, Florida, west of US 19. So we want to keep an eye out, obviously, on that very, very closely here, because that could be a very, very big concern for people that live over there. So something to be paying attention to very, very closely here. Let's see here. Franklin County has now just ordered mandatory evacuations as well. So Franklin County, you need to be getting into your safe place as well, because you need to be figuring out a plan here, because if you do live in Franklin County, so let me go into that and see exactly here. Franklin So Franklin County. See if I can find this right now for you. So Franklin County is over. Okay, so Franklin County is all the way over here. This is kind of more in the Florida Panhandle type area over here, so definitely needs to be paying attention to that because Franklin County now is under a mandatory evacuation here. The St. George Island. So something to be keeping an eye out on, obviously, there. So, still waiting for the National Hurricane Center. Still that 5 p.m. advisory here by the National Hurricane Center, so still waiting a little bit here for the National Hurricane Center to update their advisory here. So, still paying attention to these storms, man. We're going to continue to see these for hours, obviously, but the question is, you know, when do they start getting bad for certain areas? Well, I would definitely follow your National Weather Services to make sure you exactly know. Because taking a look at these storms right over here, we can clearly see a little bit more of a, you know, obviously the storm's right over here, but these storms are going to start moving inland and does have the possibility for a tornado threat. So something to be paying attention to definitely here. But the National Hurricane Center is still waiting for that update from them to see about the 8 p.m. advisory, just to see if there's been any change in it, really. So going to keep an eye out, obviously, on that very closely here. So a little bit to be paying attention to as we go on. Definitely tomorrow will be our biggest day for the live coverage due to the severe storms and the big thing that I will say most likely is that we're going to see pretty live streams pretty much like every day here until the storm is gone, because it's going to impact the Carolinas pretty good too, with some pretty big weather. So a little bit to be paying attention to here with these storms and the flash flooding and the flash flooding potential, man, pretty up there. If you take a look at that again, flash flooding potential is up there, man, is up there. We can clearly see Tallahassee, Charleston, Savannah, Georgia, Jacksonville, Georgia, Jacksonville, Florida, I'm sorry, really is in that moderate risk. And then even for the slight areas, we could be seeing some flash flooding. So definitely something to be paying attention to, but a lot of rain is anticipated right now here. So something to be paying attention to really quickly here on the flash flooding. So please make sure, just like I said in like my first couple of videos, turn around, do not drown. Turn around, don't drown. Definitely don't drive through flooded waters, because that would not be the best move, especially. And wow, look at that. We do have a severe thunderstorm warning now here for Miami. This is for western Miami. I had a feeling we'll have some type of severe thunderstorm here. So this is for western Miami here. We have a tornado, or not a tornado, a severe thunderstorm warning now for Miami. So a little bit more of a different scenario here than I would say. Yeah, so there it is right now. We can clearly see the severe thunderstorm warning. There is a tornado possible tag on this severe thunderstorm right now. So we're going to keep an eye out, obviously, on this storm very, very closely for that possibility here of a possible tornado. I mean, we could still see these spin-ups as well going on throughout the night here. Something to pay attention to as we go on, really. So, Miami, if you do live in this county, please be making sure you are watching the storm very closely here, because we could be seeing a possible tornado or water spout. Definitely could be possibly on the ground here. So, definitely something to be paying attention to. So keeping an eye out on this severe thunderstorm. Let's take a look at the velocity signature really quickly here. I mean, not too big to be paying attention to, but I mean, we could be possibly seeing a little bit of rotation somewhere in there. We could be paying attention to something in there, but the velocity signature is kind of going a little crazy here with this storm, definitely. So a little bit harder to pay attention to very closely here, but I do want to bring in right now here that we do have the National Hurricane Center advisory has now just come in here. The National Hurricane Center advisory has now just come in. So let's, I'm going to pull it up for everyone to look at here. So there it is. So here's the brand new 8 p.m. advisory. Tropical storm warnings issued for majority of all the west coast here, but keeping an eye obviously on this area right here. There we go. So now moving northwest at 14 instead of northwest at 15 miles an hour. So a little bit here of a difference that we're seeing, a little bit more of a difference here. And then we see the winds are still the same. So 40 miles an hour. They did put out on their X page right now that they did put that they do have a plane investigating the system. So they do have a plane obviously investigating the system, so that will give us a little bit more of an idea here on this, but definitely something to be paying attention to because it did slow down just a little bit. So we'll be having to wait for the 11 p.m. advisory here from the National Hurricane Center to see if we have any big changes here in the forecast, because they do have a plane out there. So could we see a little bit more of a shift to the east here? Could we see a shift to the west? That cone is still pretty big, and we could still see a possibility here for something. So it all depends here on what that is anticipating, but it has slowed down by 1 mile an hour here. So let's head back into that severe thunderstorm warning here for Miami, though. This is from one of the squall lines coming in from Tropical Storm Debby here. So, but it does have that tornado possible tag on it. We can clearly see that a tornado is possible from this. Very, very small hail still, and we're not going to expect any big hail, but winds of 60 miles an hour could be possible from this storm right here. The velocity signature is a little bit harder kind of to see, especially because it is all approaching the radar site right here in Miami. But definitely some flight delays and flight cancellations will be definitely a big thing when it comes to some certain areas right now for Miami. So something to be paying attention to. Something to be paying attention to as we go on and watch this storm go on right now throughout Miami. And this will not be the only type of severe thunderstorms that we could possibly see here, because it's not just this storm that we're watching very closely. We still have these storms that could possibly push up over here into the Miami region as well, and these could possibly bring a possible water spout. I wouldn't be surprised if we've already seen a couple water spouts actually go out in different areas already. We have, on the west coast and the east coast here. We've already been seeing a lot of that. So the 8 p.m. advisory, though, still continuing to pay attention to that. Slowed down by 1 mile an hour here. We're going to wait for that to update here. But I want to take a look here back at the planes, because the National Hurricane Center did say they have planes actually going out into this storm. So something to be paying attention to very closely here. We can see they have 2 planes actually going out. So right now, 7 minutes here. This was 7 minutes ago. They are in that system right there, paying attention to it. Let's head back to the satellite picture. Let's see, what's the best thing to... There we go. So this will probably be the better thing to look at here, but you can clearly see they are dropping a lot of stuff into it right now. This could help out the models here for our next model run. This could possibly help the models out then. And then we also could be seeing another plane as well, heading in as well with this storm. Heading in 11 minutes ago, and this one's actually has now kind of arrived here in the northern part of the storm. So a little bit to be paying attention to, obviously, with this, because this could be really helping out the models for the next model runs that could be happening. So a little bit to be paying attention to with that. So we could be seeing, could we see a little bit more of a northeastern turn a little bit earlier? I'm not saying definitely it's not going to. Most likely it will not turn over here and make a landfall there. It could still make a little bit of an impact, maybe still over here in this region right here. That would be our best possibilities. But the question is does the models change a little bit to say, hey, we think a little bit more of an eastern track, or hey, do we think more of a western track? So definitely is something to be keeping an eye out on, because if it did go a little bit more of a westward track, we could see maybe a little bit more of interesting type of scenarios for the west coast of Florida. And then if it goes in the western part of the cone, more for the Florida Panhandle and more of, throughout Georgia. So definitely having to keep an eye out, obviously, on the Hurricane Center and their hurricane hunters out there, because that could change a lot here. But Miami's still under that severe thunderstorm warning right now, so keeping an eye obviously on that. With this storm, so please make sure if you live in Miami, you are making sure that you are doing okay with the storm. You are staying in your safe place, because I don't think this will be the only kind of severe storm we see, as some of these could be pushing up as well with this storm here. We're going to see a lot of squally lines, so a little bit to be paying attention to. So thank you so much for watching the live stream, though. So please make sure, though, to watch out for, we'll be having a video tomorrow morning, or just a live stream here, so we'll have to keep an eye obviously on that. So please make sure you are paying attention, though, to your local National Weather Services and the National Hurricane Center as the storm approaches the west coast of Florida here. We will start to see some weather start to deteriorate for the west coast of Florida tomorrow. So definitely something to be paying attention to. So please make sure you are staying safe out there, and please make sure to be staying tuned into your weather centers here. So please be making sure about that.